You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Just a couple of messages for you, and then we go into affirmative action. I'll tell my friends here, the women, about some stories that maybe what affirmative action will do, we have no idea yet. I know of some constituencies where the women outnumber the men in every respect. Go to the University of Ghana Law Faculty and go and find out. They have recorded 70% or more of women. All right, so this one from Alhaj Suleiman. He says, after reading the judgment, I felt so angry. Why are we treating our country this way? It's all politics at the detriment of Ghana. Clearly, there was no basis to charge Atuforcing, and that the ambulances were salvageable, but they deliberately left them to rot just to make a case against Atuforcing. The judges point to that, or at worst, people at the Ministry of Health were rather liable. Somehow, it makes me believe Jakpa's accusations against the AG. It's really sad, and I'm disappointed in Godfrey Dame and this government. Okay, so this one says that plea bargain is only between the parties in a criminal matter. Big C was not a party to begin with. As part of a judgment in a criminal trial, a judge can make an order for restitution, i.e., order an accused person to pay back the money to the victim or further punishment in lieu of, okay, this is from Wilbur. Thank you. Yakubu Ibn Chambers says, inasmuch as it might seem the Attorney General is bruised by the Court of Appeal and embarrassed in the public domain, he should be proud of his boldness and determination to protect the state coffers. He must be minded that his integrity and reputation are intact. The enthusiasm of the Attorney General to have rushed to the court for a possible prosecution of perceived corruption case should be appreciated. In any case, the courtroom is not a guaranteed grounds for expectations. You lose or you win. This one, Boama says, just abusing the judicial process. That is what it is. Musa Abatua says, Sami Jamfi has done a commendable job in breaking down the complexities of the ambulance case you meant to write, making it accessible to the everyday person. However, what concerns me deeply is not just the strong language he used, but the apparent mess. Okay, you want me to be Stephen Amwa, eh? I don't know how to pronounce these long words. An attempt to persecute and imprison innocent people like Atuforcing and others at all costs. This is a worrying thing, an unjust act that should alarm all who value fairness in the society. Rabna Opoku says that Attorney General should have pursued the contracting company and not the agent. Yeah, that's what the court says. I don't think it's a political witch hunt. We should pursue it and retrieve the taxpayers' money. That brings up a big question that we answered for you. In a serious country, the Minister of Attorney General and Justice should have resigned immediately. Dr. Atuforcing was acquitted and discharged by the appeal court. Looking at all that have transpired between Richard Jakpa and Godfrey Dame, okay, Ghana is unwell. Okay, thanks for your messages. Maybe just this one more. A layman question. What happens to the High Court judge who seems not to have applied themselves to fidelity of the law? Shouldn't they be marked as what? No. That's what happens. Everybody gives a decision. That's why there are layers of the court. If you are not happy, you go to the next stage. That's what it is. Thank you very much. So now let's come to affirmative action. So We want to apologize sincerely to our radio audience for the intermittent breaks that you have suffered. Forgive us, it is the internet that has been this unhelpful. But thank you for staying with us. And I'm delighted, very delighted, to have in the studio Sheila Menka-Premo, lawyer and convener, Affirmative Action Bill Coalition. What a relief you must be sighing. After how many years? To the point, you actually smuggled part of this bill into the land law. Because you didn't see it happening.
Well, I wouldn't say we didn't see it happening. We knew eventually it would happen. It did take a very long time.
Right.
You know, more than 13, over 13 years for us to get here. So we are very elated, very happy that the bill eventually passed.
Great, great. So Sheila Menka-Premo has been one of the people in the background. They do a lot. They don't talk about it. And here in the studio also is the lady who is shaking grounds with some new development as far as her advocacy is concerned. Shamima Muslim, member of the NDC communication team. She has been a gender activist for a very long time and also leading women's progress in the media landscape. Thank you, Shamima, for making time to join us.
Thank you, my brother.
Yeah. How many seminars do you remember you have been over this affirmative action bill over the period?
I think uncountable. Uncountable. I think that the whole women's representation and presentation debate and safety transcends the affirmative action bill. I think I was a young graduate in 2003 when I started work with Legal Resources Center, and I was put on the Domestic Violence Coalition with my senior. So people don't know where the passion comes from. It comes from the opportunity to have worked with people and being in spaces like them that really, you know, honed the advocacy and the passion for the issues, because very soon I came at close contact with germane issues that were real, that I could relate to from my background, you know, as a young Northern Muslim girl. And so, yes, it's been a long time coming. And what I know for sure is that every right that women enjoy today, they've had to claim. They have had to claim them from the actions and mobilizing of the women's movement in Ghana.
Let's go into the meat shortly.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And then former Deputy Attorney General is still here with us, Dimdior Pwenka, Bobby Banson, also a lawyer and author of 2 legal texts on civil procedure and commercial arbitration. Now, I'll start with Sheila. So, yes, room for celebration. Yes, it's been 2 decades. Yes, but we know what's this country, what happens. It's not the passage of the law. It is the implementation of the law. We have all the beautiful laws.
So the Affirmative Action Bill Coalition, which is made up of a number of CSOs that came together to push for this law, the objective we set for ourselves are twofold. One is to push to have the law, and once the law is enacted, we would also push to ensure that it is effectively implemented. As Shamima indicated, I have a history with a similar objective, which was to push for the Domestic Violence Act. Afterwards, we worked together with the ministry, developed the implementing legislation, and did other things with them to ensure that the law worked. So it's the same kind of energy that we are bringing to this law. Having had it passed, having helped to push to have it passed, we would also help with the implementation.
Right.
We will work with the ministry in developing the relevant regulations or legislative instruments required for it. One of the things that is supposed to be done is to come up with a plan of action to ensure that this is supposed to be developed by the Gender Equity Committee that is responsible for the law. We also work first to ensure that this, as early as possible, this committee is put together. One of their key activities is to come up with a plan of action. We'll also work with them.
We'll go into aspects or salient aspects of the law shortly. Yes, but first, what's the justification for it, particularly at this time? And I'm going back to my example. The University of Ghana is such a beautiful example to use. The leadership of the University of Ghana, from VC, from Chancellor, VC, Registrar, name them, and the heads of departments, littered with women. And I'm saying, in one particular school, at one point, over 70% women.
I think that this is one, I don't know whether I would call it a positive development in our history, and it's a rarity.
Yeah.
On the other hand, in most of these public universities, if you're using public universities as an example, majority of the leadership is male. It just happens that currently at the University of Ghana, yes, the chair, the vice chancellor, etc., many of them are women. And I believe that, I'm not too sure whether it was intentional for it to reflect in that way, but whatever happened, that the key leaders there are female, it's for me, it's a credit to the competence of those women who are out there.
Right.
Because they are also not there just because they are women, but because these are very capable women who have worked, some in the public sector for a long time, some in other sectors, and were appointed based on pure merit.
Therein lies my question. Therein lies my question.
Yes.
What's the justification for this? Shouldn't women get to where they must on merit?
Yes, women must get to where they are based on merit, but we live in a patriarchal community. We live in a culture where basically the headship of men is what is the norm. That is the norm. And therefore, women who are even qualified and who want to occupy certain positions have challenges in either aspiring to get there, etc. A lot of women, for instance, who are very capable, have basic education, some even more tertiary education, very qualified, who want to go to parliament. It is very difficult because you have to go and campaign on platforms in communities where they don't see you as a natural leader. And a lot of insults are hurled at you. If you're not married, then, excuse me to say, you're labeled as an Ashawa woman. If you're married, I've been told, some of them are asked, have you finished organizing your home before you're at the platform seeking to come and represent us? So people don't naturally see women as leaders, and a lot of obstacles are put in their way. And therefore, it was necessary to have legislation, because I think you're asking about the justification. This is justified. One of the key justifications for this law is in our own constitution, Article 17 of our constitution. Article 17, first of all, says there should be no discrimination on the basis of gender. It defines what gender is, etc. But 17.4 is very clear. It says that where historically it's been found that there's been discrimination in certain sectors against one gender, there is nothing wrong if Parliament passes a law to bring in policies and programs to address the imbalance. And this is what this law is seeking to do. I'll also mention 35, 5 and 6, where it says that in recruitment into public offices, regional as well as gender considerations should be taken into consideration. So the whole thing is talking about balance, okay? And like I said, because a lot of studies, existing studies, shows that when it comes to leadership positions, there are fewer women in leadership positions as compared to men. This legislation is seeking to sort of put strategies in place to let this happen in a more maybe strategic way. And this is the same steps that other countries have taken. Many countries, both Western, but we like to use examples within the African continent. Many countries that have seen a lot of women in leadership, it was through legislation that they used to ensure that this happened. And for me, one of the classic areas where you see the numbers of women is very low, which is in parliament. Out of our 275-member parliament, only 40 are women, making it 14.5. The UN, which Ghana belongs to, Ghana is a member of the United Nations, has indicated that minimum threshold when it comes to gender representation is 30%. We are way below. In Ghana, the highest we've ever had is 18.5, and this was in 1965. After we had the first affirmative action law in 1960, when we became a republic, and the then president pushed to have this representation of the People's Act, which brought in 10 women. People saw the women working and could see that women could also be leaders. Yeah. And therefore, at the next election, people voted for women. And I'm sure that if the democracy hadn't been interrupted with the coup d'etat, I am sure naturally we would have progressed to a level where we would have reached that level where the competency, they will look at your competency and not just your sex. So this law is necessary to propel, to enable us to ensure
the
that there's
Constitution
inclusion.
in the directive principles of state policy makes a requirement for the balance in gender.
That's it.
The politicians have not lived up to it. That's the Constitution, the supreme law of the land.
Yes.
What's the guarantee that they will live up to a statute, an inferior legislation, so to speak?
There is, well, you know, constitutional provisions, sometimes it's difficult to apply them directly, okay? That is why acts of parliament are prepared to ensure that it picks up provisions from the Constitution that needs to be actualized to give it legs to work. So for me, since this document went to Parliament, they have looked at it, they have seen the need to have something like that in our country. I believe that they will comply with it. This is an act initiated, yes, by the executive, went through the parliamentary process. They have seen the wisdom in having such a law. I believe that they would comply. I believe strongly that they will comply with it.
Initially, it was to go under a certificate of urgency. And the Speaker says, no, I want to have broader consultation and input into it, so it won't go through that way. You were a bit disappointed.
You
Has
know,
anything changed?
we've been doing a lot of lobbying. So we've been in and out of Parliament, both, you know, lobbying individual people, etc. One of the things, after it was laid under the certificate of urgency in October, one of the bodies, so we saw that it was referred to the Gender and Children Committee. And they indicated that they had looked at, they themselves indicated that they had looked at the law and they needed more input from outside. And therefore, they didn't think it was going to be possible to use the certificate of urgency, which required them to sort of handle the law themselves and push it. We then saw the Speaker, you know, also trying to get an explanation as to what was going on. And he was also very clear that the nature of this law was such that they needed input, they needed stakeholders to bring in their own views and perspectives. So after that conversation, we as a coalition understood what the dynamics were. And we also realized, having seen the bill, that the bill itself had a few challenges at that time with it. And we thought that this was an opportunity for us to then also contribute and make an input and work together with Parliament and the ministry to ensure that this law got passed. So it was an initial shock, but upon further reflection and upon talking to the relevant committees and the members of Parliament, we realized that maybe it was the wisest thing to do.
Okay.
And it gave us an opportunity to work together with that committee that was mandated to consider the bill and to help to make our input and then, you know, engage with them.
Right. I'll return to you, but Shamima, which portions of this law give you so much excitement?
There's no excitement because I am practical enough to recognize that the real work actually begins from today. The vision for me, what is fundamental and significant for me is that even though we have a largely watered down version of the previous editions and an expanded, you know, framing of what the marginalizations or who the marginalized groups are. So it goes beyond just women and the removal of women as a primary reference in the bill to other disadvantaged, underrepresented groups, even though the original intent was typically a women's bill, because that is where the gaps, the historical gaps have been, to the extent that a parliament, a National Assembly has finally at least agreed that such a law is important to exist is a good starting point for me. So it's a good first step that the recognition has happened, albeit there are existing challenges and appreciation with the concepts and ideologies and, you know, the justifications, you know, for a women's bill. And some express fear that are we not creating a society where into the near future men will become disadvantaged? This is why I think that one of the major things we should do almost as at now, and I'll do a bit of it now in terms of the public education, is to situate the conceptual understanding of the mandate, okay, of what the law intends to achieve. And I'm happy where you started. You started off giving us the rare example of University of Ghana, my alma mater. And that is exactly the reason why it is justified to have it. You would know that University of Ghana has had affirmative action policies for a long time now to ensure that persons or students from disadvantaged communities get entrance, women and girls get entrance. But for that affirmative action, we wouldn't have had the numbers of females coming into the university as we currently have, or the numbers of persons of disability who have come into the university as we currently have, or the numbers of students from across some of our communities which are really
Would you say you are an outlier? I saw you in University of Ghana.
Yes.
From level 100.
Yes.
You took advantage of all the opportunities you had.
Yes, I did.
And we all knew you on campus
Yes.
for advocacy work on Radio Universe and the rest of them. There was nothing that stopped you from being who you wanted to be.
But today I was on Metro television, and that's one of the issues we need to address, the narrative that what is stopping people. I am an outlier because I had opportunities, you know, that built my confidence. You talked about Radio Universe. I went to Holy Child School, and I am an outlier because my father left Upper West to come to the South to hustle. My grandmother had not sat in the classroom before, but she took my mom to school in Tamale when she was there. My mom started school in Tamale. My grandmother, who had never been to school, took my mother to school. And today, see where I am. You know, so had my dad not come, had my dad not invested in education, you know, as a Muslim man, because traditionally we all know some of the considerations around the issues of girl-child education, I wouldn't be here. And so my story could have been the story of thousands more Shamimes had they had similar opportunities. So when we come into even the university, feeling, you always sometimes, you know, a space can make you feel comfortable and confident to want to express yourself, or you could feel like you, what do they call this thing? Like you are an outcast of some sort. And you know those self-censoring things which require interventions in confidence building, public speaking. And I was lucky because I started Radio Universe. Until Radio Universe, I didn't know I had any skills to be on radio. But I worked myself into Radio Universe because something, Alhaji Sadiq came to speak to us at orientation. And these are the reasons why representation is such a very powerful tool to me, because I saw him as a Muslim coming to speak to us. I felt confident to walk to Radio Universe immediately after that session. When we closed, I felt confident to walk to Radio Universe and to ask, what are the modalities to volunteer here? And I was asked to go and write a letter and come, which I did. It is important for people to see people who look like them, who come from similar backgrounds as them, in positions of power and influence. When we went to Tamale, because of radio, the kinds of stories that have emerged singularly, because I decided to come and sit on radio and TV and speak. The stories of young Muslim girls who today aspire to be in journalism. Go to GIJ and see the numbers of young Muslim girls who have come. Some write to me because they say they saw me and they knew that they also could. So we must never underestimate the power of representation and optics. It matters. And so the University of Ghana is a good example of how, when opportunity is given and opportunity is taken, I know opportunity needs to be given, but it also has to be taken. And when opportunity is given, yes, competence would always trump any other thing. And this is not talking about appointing women who are not competent. So we need to understand that the entire equality debate, and I have some slides I will show, you know, after, if you give me the time,
right,
is not a disadvantage to men, neither is it a disadvantage to men's progress. But it is a call for all of us to see how do we redistribute our collective opportunities, our collective resources, so that we can give meaning to our constitution. which envisages a society of non-discrimination on the basis of sex, on the basis of class, on the basis of religion, on the basis of any other, avenues of discriminations. The Constitution sees all of us as bona fide members of a society who should have access to our shared, resources and should be able to aspire to be in any space whatsoever.
So you've just been listening to Sheila Minka Premo. Sheila Minka Premo is a senior lawyer, and she's lawyer and convener Affirmative Action Bill Coalition. You just also heard Shamima Muslim, who is a member of the NDC Communications team and a gender activist. Gender activists used to lead. Now the communication comes in. So let me do this. I've seen one of the men putting their hand up. I'm sorry, you're not going to speak yet. Oh. I'll take a quick break. When I return,
you see the balance.
When I return, Sheila will take us through her favorite 3 provisions. Shamima will do the same before we hear from the men. And the men will speak very briefly. We'll be right back. Welcome back. A Newsfile is brought to you by Bank of Africa. As strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex tanks, it's strong, it's tough. Flamingo paints, simply superior. Yes, so Sheila, let's hear what will be your favorite 3 provisions of this act.
Okay. So there's a provision which deals with governance and decision-making in the public service. And it indicates that the government is to ensure progressive, equitable representation of women in public office, in governance and decision-making. So it mentions, ministerial positions at the Council of State, independent constitutional bodies, governing bodies of state institutions, public service, district assemblies. So they're supposed to be guided by the provisions of this act.
Yeah.
So the governing bodies of these institutions are supposed to ensure that in filling vacancies for positions of authority and decision-making in these institutions, gender is taken into consideration. My other one, too, is gender budgeting. So he says that all the relevant institutions, when they are budgeting, they should consciously ensure that they consider both the needs of men and women when making their budgets to ensure that their needs are addressed. Then gender equality also in private sector. I find it also very interesting. It says that within private sector institutions, they're supposed to have gender policies so that they consciously think about gender issues when they are employing, when they are promoting, when they are doing the rest
and there's incentive for that, for private sector.
For that. I find it very interesting. So there are incentives for that, which is there are some tax incentives, as well as for those who apply for government contracts, etc. They have to have what we call a gender compliance certificate, which is supposed to be issued once annually you are complying with it. So I find these clauses very interesting.
Okay. The portion about your first one about progressive and ensure, that kind of balance, as I mentioned earlier, it's already in the Constitution anyway, and it's not being complied with. So this time, if the state doesn't comply with it, what happens?
So basically, there are targets at the back. So the way this law is structured is not like once it starts working, you hit 50%.
Okay.
It is you walk the equity road until you get to equality, which is the benchmark. And because the Constitution talks about getting a balance, once it reaches equality, the idea is that the program in place will stop.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's not one of those perpetual ones where eventually they would say that women will come and overtake men. No, once there's balance, it stops.
Okay.
So there's the target, it starts from 30%. I think they're doing the review. First it was 30, 40, then we'll hit by 2030, where the UN says the Sustainable Development Goal says that you should have reached parity, then it will stop. During the changes it went through in Parliament, I think they changed it's from 30 to 35, and it's sort of gradual. So the idea is progressive. That is how it's been designed as.
Before Shamima comes in...
Sorry,
go ahead.
Answer your question.
Go ahead.
So if they don't comply, what happens? First of all, the body that has been set up, reports can be made to them.
Okay.
So they take investigations and to come up with reports and to insist, to push, to order a particular institution to ensure compliance. If that fails, or if an individual is directly affected, they can go to SHRAJ to lodge a complaint. If it's labor-related, they can go to the National Labour Commission. Then whoever is not satisfied with the outcome on any of these institutions can go to the courts, the high courts, to initiate an action.
We remember one of the issues that actually delayed this, the passage, was the thorny issue of cohabitation. Has it been resolved?
Cohabitation has nothing to do with this law.
Okay.
Totally nothing to do with this law.
Okay.
And spousal rights.
Cohabitation was in
under spousal rights.
Correct,
spousal rights.
So cohabitation has nothing.
Thank you very much. Yes. Right, Shamima, your favorite.
Yeah, because already we have a lot of work to do to try and get, so for me, the areas for for moving forward that we must look at the people, the structures, and the systems, okay? The people are all the stakeholders that would need to come on the same page to ensure that we get a full operationalization of the law. The structures that on which, the various provisions are to be activated, and the systems that would ensure compliance, monitoring, evaluation, and implementing the system of rewards. So I do like the system of rewards, but it looks like the law is quite heavy on punitive sanctions as against more rewards. The entire spirit is like a moral suasion sort of, but we need to find ways of enforcing it beyond just morally swaying people and actors to take decisions, because there's the science to the benefits of a more equitable society where all of its members, men, women, able, disabled, are all, contributing beyond their minimum. One of the areas worth applauding for me, again, is the strategies for gender equality in relation to public services, including periodically updating directory of qualified women from which appointments should be made. And that's it, I think, in clause 3 and the 4th schedule. One of the major things we always hear, where are the women? Where are the women? So the women are there. This directory will be very helpful. Even in the media, you ask when we complain about panels that are male-dominated, we'll get a pushback that we don't find the women. So we need such a directory of qualified women. We need various public institutions to periodically publicize spaces where glass ceilings, opportunities for glass ceilings to be broken. We want to break glass ceilings, and we need to have the audits of organizations to see where they are in terms of the inclusion and diversity agenda, whether it's the security agencies, judiciary, parliament. Parliaments, the provisions around, politics.
The judiciary is another place where you have a great number of women.
So you must always ask why. The why question is very curious for us to amplify. I think
we understand that
competence.
It is Georgina Wood.
They have a gender strategy.
And they have a gender strategy.
I was part of the team that helped them.
All right.
2011.
Okay.
So I think, Angela, what we have to do is to highlight these success stories so the citizens will understand what benefits we stand to gain when women are in these, kinds of positions and in spaces. So that is a very important provision to have. Also, the requirement for Public Services Commission to equip women for promotion. I spoke about appointment, promotions, and elections. One of the ways to bridge the gap, if we allow organic growth, this is where we are. The World Economic Forum says it will take us 135 years to bridge the gender pay gap. 135 years. Even with all these interventions, all these, demands and laws and, agreements we are ratifying. Ghana has ratified so many international conventions around the issues of gender equality, but we are so consumed with names and framing that we even think that equality, there's a misconception about the meaning of equality that makes people quite sensitive to the use of it, and we are pushing to call the law the Gender Equity Bill. If we understood that equality at its base, at its foundation, is about opportunities, equality of opportunities and removing barriers to participation, we wouldn't think that it is women coming to lord it over men or women taking over their positions. So the ways in which we can bridge the gap through affirmative action instrument is either by making appointments of women. And when you come to the politics, which is the weaker aspect of this law, we have an executive presidency. I have heard you talk about reviewing the constitution to at least roll back some of the powers of the president. He has such wide-ranging appointive powers. So if you have wide-ranging appointive powers, it means you can appoint qualified women into positions, which is why some of us were quite disappointed when he went to Canada and said that Ghanaian women hadn't shown enough dynamism. Today I heard from Gloria that as a remedial action, the manifesto committee of their party insisted chairs and co-chairs to be women. It's good because of the backlash that President Akufo-Addo got by telling us that Ghanaian women hadn't shown enough dynamism. Who is more dynamic in this space than Ghanaian women? So I think he must situate the implementation at the office of the presidency to give it backing and ensure that at least the structures that are needed, because there would be some expense to the public purse. Okay. But this is good expense because the bottom line would eventually. So this is what I wanted to talk about if there is time to talk about it. But the first one, because I think we should just pictorially understand what this entire inequality, equity thing
I need you to run through it quickly.
Yes, quickly. So then please use the first one, okay? Otherwise, just leave it. You see, the tree, you can come back to that other one because I won't have time to do. The tree is the systems. Okay. The systems, the structures, and those are the systemic barriers to participation. And here is the legal barriers, the institutional barriers, the cultural policy, even administrative barriers. So you would see that there's a system that is skewed to the advantage of some members of the society, okay, even though the fruits are there, yes, even though, and physiologically can also represent so many other things, okay, just see it at that. So this portends an unequal situation where someone has access to our collective resources and opportunities and others are disadvantaged. If you come to the equality debate, after seeing these systemic imbalances in our society where women's participation, when people with disability participation, where even regional and other ethnic balance issues come at play, the conversations are around how do we make access to our collective opportunities more equal. Okay. So intervention comes, let's give everybody an equal playing field. So our constitution says no discrimination. And yet, so even though we have non-discriminatory policies, what do we see? From the third equity level, we see that people are still unable to access because of their peculiar challenges. And so equity says that no, there are real barriers to participation. How do we bridge the barriers? So what do? You recognize those that are in need of more support. So if there are few women representation, how do we increase the numbers? Through an affirmative action, instrument. So you would see in the third picture on equity that we are now trying to balance the equation based off on our individual peculiarities and challenges. But the real ideal situation is a recognition of the problem, the root cause of the problem, which are the systemic challenges that I spoke to you earlier. When we align the structure of our society, where truly every member of the society is able to access public goods equally, people with disability can have access to this story building because there's an disability access. These are real, germane, sensitive issues that create a freer and fair society. And at the ideal stage, when we have liberation, there are no barriers. We can all participate fully and effectively, and that is what this affirmative action would achieve.
Bobby.
Okay.
Yes.
First, I would want to congratulate Auntie Sheila. I don't know, you know that...
She has been at this for years.
And I had the opportunity to live with her and her husband. She's been Capremo for years, so I know how passionate she has been at this. So congratulations to her. I had a cursory look at the law. There's one thing that I found rather curious, the power given to the minister to give exemption. I think that we'll be creating another problem with that, particularly when there's a committee, a structure that has been established to monitor and implement the provisions of the law? Why do you give one single person the opportunity to exempt?
It has changed.
Okay.
Oh, they have changed it. Okay. Then I'm happy that.
So once again, let's be minded that we are waiting for the final deal, which will be assented to by the president. I doubt there will be any reason for refusing assent. Can you imagine any reason to refuse assent?
Refuse assent?
Yes.
It would be difficult, but there was a provision in it which they also took out, which we thought, there was something that we call bona fide occupational requirements. So for a particular thing, there's a difference between sex issues. When it comes to sexual differences, men are stronger, they are whatever it is. So provision was made for that small window where somebody, you can make a case that, look, for this particular job, maybe I need a man, whatever. So that the committee would consider and give access. But
I'm happy if it's with the committee.
Right.
I mean, the population of Ghana is almost equally split. I mean, the women even are more than the men.
Yeah.
And so if it becomes, and especially the area about the political party role.
Even on our electoral register, the women are more than the men.
And so if you have the political parties being held accountable by the coalitions and the CSOs, that we would want to see how. Unfortunately, I'm not sure they can start working on it this election year, but at least from next election year, all your appointments, because most of the parliamentarians have already been elected. Now, I was just thinking, I mean, this is a very good thing, but could we also have an affirmative action, even something like that, for the youth? Perhaps. I was just thinking along those lines that, I mean, if we look at those things in that sector,
sorry.
but
sorry, Bobby, sorry.
Which you will not qualify. I mean, because we have across Africa now, from Kenya, Nigeria, started with the Arab Spring, the youth saying, and the youth, both men and women, that we have a political class that seem not to be interested in our development. And so this is perfect. It's taken more than 10 years to bring it to this light. So perhaps
maybe we can take youth budgeting. Yes, Kwanka.
We have a whole ministry for youth.
I was just going to reference the point you made about the Constitution, particularly the directive principles of state policy. Even the pronunciations that have been made by the Supreme Court. Sometimes they say it's justiciable, another time they say it is not, it's just a guide. But with the law, I think the difference is that you can go to court and enforce it. If it is deliberately not being implemented. And that's the difference. And I totally agree with them. You see, what they are doing, the advocates, what they are doing, they are not representing the interests of women. No, that's not it. If you understand it better, they are representing the interests of society.
That's it.
That's the reflection that I see. Just advocating for a balance. They're not asking for more than they are supposed to be given and all that. There are some areas where naturally some of these things have been solved by interest shown and qualifications and competencies and etc.
Like I referenced the UG, then I referenced the judiciary, and suddenly I realized that they are actually following a policy. Because I didn't know. So maybe that's what a policy or by way of law will do. At the University of Ghana, the Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor, the Registrar, the Director of Finance, the Director of Internal Audit, all of them. And in certain departments, many. And Dr. Eric Oduro-Sai says, we need the affirmative action law like yesterday. The University of Ghana is a clear example that if we are intentional about gender mainstreaming and effective partnership between men and women, we will promote and see more development in this country than before. Congratulations to all those who have worked tirelessly to see the passing of the Affirmative Action Bill into law. Yes, please continue.
Yeah, so I was just about to say also that not only that institution, I mentioned also the Office of Attorney General as it stands today. If you get there at the top, the DPP, the SG, the Director Drafting, copyright, then one of the deputies. All of them are female.
And state attorneys.
State attorneys, they are the majority. The females are forming an overwhelming majority of those who are offering their services to the country as attorneys.
Also because research found that females are largely less corrupt It's a science. It's a science. Forget the exceptions. It's a science.
Well, I will refuse to be drawn to that one for now.
By the directive principles of state policy we just referred to.
Yes.
Why is it that we know the problems with women as far as the political field is concerned, the problems they face with finance and all? If she's successful, then she must be sleeping somewhere. That kind of crap we have heard over and again.
Absolute nonsense.
Now, those who contest, there is opportunity for appointments onto the place. Why don't we use the appointments to at least try to equal the numbers?
Yeah, that's also another way. That's another way of doing
special measures.
You know, so it has to be deliberate. You know, but if you go back to the Independence Constitution and then those other things, there were deliberate policies that were churned out and all that. But I'm saying, I just wanted to say that this law is long overdue.
Right.
Long overdue. We are crafting it at a time we should have had it 30 years back. You know, because of course today, as we are speaking, we have examples, clear examples of, without even the affirmative action law coming into fruition, we have, deliberate public policy in some institutions that have been able to breach this, and it has become history. So I will only say that all of us will put our shoulders to the wheel and assist in the implementation process, because we've had all the beautiful laws in this country, but our problem has always been the implementation. We should not celebrate and go to sleep. We should ensure that we actually practicalize and operationalize it. And that is why I will urge that people should participate in the enactment of the legislative instrument that will operationalize the act itself. That's very important.
Okay.
But if you don't have that to operationalize it, then in the end, the purpose will be defeated.
Right. Thank you.
I wanted to quickly just add that we need leadership and commitment to ensure that this works. And some of the low-hanging fruits are elections, at least for the next 4 months, towards the December 7th elections. The women who are on the ballot must be given some consideration. A lot of them lost their primaries. We have 40 women. It's most likely if we are not lucky, we will not even get the same numbers in Parliament. And the Interparliamentary Union has given notice to countries who would fail to meet the minimum 30% by 2030, that they will be reduced from member status to observer status. I would also like to suggest, yes, it will have cost. Like the Council of State elections, let's see how we can do women elections regionally and ensure that at least we can have 16 women representatives from 16 regions of Ghana.
Thank you very much.
And then vote. I mean, we are going to most likely have a first female vice president, Nana Jane.
I knew you would rub that in.
Thank you very much. That glass ceiling.
And Ifwa says that the gender ministry also looking at sensitization, particularly concerning public services, once this bill is assented to. And that is refreshing. Thank you very much. Edward Addo says the issue of ladies who pass all aspects of entry qualifications into security agencies but later disqualified on grounds of pregnancy, etc., is very bad. This law addresses that disastrous gaffe that we have suffered as a country. Well, join Nathaniel Atto on Joy Sports Link as he brings you revealing conversations with goalkeeper and coach Fatau Dauda. Which lady are you bringing on the show? Please bring Veronica Komi there, who famously celebrated after saving a shot from Cristiano Ronaldo at the FIFA World Cup. He delves into his journey, which has now landed him the Black Stars goalkeeper's trainer role. The Joy Sports Link with Nathaniel Atto will be live after the midday news. And my outfit, as always on this show, is paid for and made by Konati Clothing. You can find them at Adenta Shopping Center, Adenta Down. Call them 0244 676732. 0244 676732. Join me on my favorite show tomorrow at 2 p.m. That is the law. And we're going to be continuing our discussion on justice for all and the miracles it is doing for the disadvantaged in our prisons. And then talk again about the alternative sentencing policies that a nation must have to have a sane community. There was a woman, for lack of the funds to pay for 1 cedi, got into jail. 1 cedi, 1 cedi. Yes. Justice for all, save there. Yes. All right. So thank you also very much, Sheila, Shamima, Pemka, and Bobby Banson. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini. This show, as always, is paid for by Bank of Africa, MTN, Ashesi University, Robert & Sons Optical Services, My Way, Syntax Tanks, and Flamingo Paints. Have a good afternoon.